Hi, I'm Mark MacDonald from Lancaster University. I'm the director of teaching in the Maths and Stats department there. So this talk is essentially an update on a talk that I gave last year at EAMS. This year, I've expanded the number of modules that I'm using these multi-attempt quizzes in. So I'll talk about that. Right. So firstly, just want to recap from last year what this style is. So this is a multiple true-false is the question format. So what this means is it's not just a sequence of true-false questions. It's you have one setup and then multiple true-false questions about that one setup. So for example, you have the vector space of 2x2 matrices. Here's some true-false questions about that. Or here's an example of a proof that may have some mistakes in it. True-false questions. Line 3 used linearity, or something like that, right? It's a linear algebra module is where I started these. So there's tons, it's a huge range of things that you can ask about using these true-false statements. And the way that I have it set up is students are allowed to do multiple attempts of the quiz. And the way that works is that each true-false statement, so say there's multiple of them for each question, each true-false statement, there are several variants of that as well. So there's actually lots and lots of true-false statements for every quiz. And every time the student tries another attempt, they get a new random selection of the true-false statements. Okay, and then they also get, so after each attempt, they also get feedback. So they get a bit of feedback, some text feedback, and they get their marks, but they don't get exactly which questions are true and false. So this prevents them from just brute forcing and figuring out what all of the true-false statements are, because they know that they got something wrong, but they don't know exactly what. Okay, so a few other details. These are very low stakes quizzes, 1% of their overall grade. Typically, negative marking is used. So this is if they get a question wrong, then they get some negative marks. If they don't answer, then they get 0 for that question. The reason is because in true-false, if you're randomly guessing, then you pass, which doesn't seem right. Highest mark counts. You could do it where it's the final mark, the final attempt counts, but I've chosen the highest mark counts to sort of encourage perseverance. And each attempt has a time limit of 2 hours. So this is just, when it was open, they would leave it open all night, for example. Which didn't seem like a good use of time. And then there's a delay between attempts. So they can't just like submit their answers and then immediately do the quiz again. There's a delay where they can't start the next attempt until a certain amount of time has passed. So I've played around with a few different lengths of time. So 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 60 minutes. So I'll talk a bit about those. Right, so the focus of last time's, my talk last time was about learning gain, and it's like this. So this is, I don't know if hopefully you can see these dots. So this is the quiz that I ran in my large second year module this academic year. And what this represents, so the y-axis is the mark on the quiz for each attempt, and the x-axis is which attempt it is. So this is split into 8 boxes. So the first box here is, for example, the students who just took 1 attempt and then that was it. Okay. Second box, students who took 2 attempts in total. So the first column is kind of their first attempt, what mark they got, and the second is what they got in the second attempt, right? So, and then the line here is the average mark. So it indicates what the average is. So very clearly they went up, the average increased. Good. And in fact, you can see in all of these different attempt numbers, say the students who did 6 attempts, it clearly increases. So this it's not the case that every student increases in this kind of monotonic way, but when you take the average over all students, there is this, you can see the increase. You can see this learning gain, which is quite encouraging, because it really does suggest that they are learning. Right, so I'll move on from that. So that's just for one module, and it's a similar picture in all of the modules, actually, that I ran these quizzes in. Okay, and to compare the modules, here is some graphs. So let me, so there's the very furthest left, this was last academic year. The other four were all this academic year. So the second one was the module I led, second year linear algebra, and the other three are first year modules. Okay, so the x-axis here is the week of the quiz. So each bar represents a different quiz in the module. The y-axis, okay, so for the lines represents the marks. So the blue marks, so this is a rough measure of quiz difficulty, mark out of 100. This is represented on the right-hand side scale. And then there's two lines. So the upper line is the final attempt and the lower line is the first attempt. So you can already see in these two, the gap between these two lines is the learning gain, right? They start out here and then they end up there. It's about 10 or even 20% in some cases increase. Okay, and then the bars are kind of representing effort, student effort. So the gray bars is the average number of attempts on a scale from 0 to 5. So in the second year module, they're averaging something like 4 attempts every week. This is out of 8. And the first year ones were lower, 2 or 3 attempts. And the red bars indicate how many hours, again, out of 5, that they have the quiz open for. So this is something that you can extract from Moodle. It sort of had the duration that when they started, when they finished, so you can work out how long it was open for. So, and this is on average, they're spending something like 1.5 hours with a quiz open. This is adding up all of their attempts that week. So it's a significant amount of time. And okay, so what can we see from this picture? I mean, first of all, you can see how it changes within a module. So the quiz difficulty, you can sort of build a narrative. It's helpful to do this just for the reason that because it's being marked by a computer, you don't really get the sense. It's not like you're marking it and you say, ooh, they did really badly this week, or you get feedback from the tutors or something. It's important to make a conscious effort to look at the data and say, how did they find it this week? Something that jumps out as well, the relation between difficulty and effort, is that the more difficult the quiz is, the more effort they seem to put in. I mean, this maybe isn't surprising, but it is definitely borne out by the data. Okay. And then the other remark I wanted to make about this picture is the similarity between so these furthest two left pictures are the same quizzes I used each year. So same quiz 2021 and then same 2022. And they almost mirror exactly. So a completely different cohort of students, but the average marks, the first marks, the number of attempts, the number of hours they spend on it, it's almost identical. It's quite remarkable in that sense. Right, so that's what I want to say about that one. Next one, so I have 3 slides of data and then that's sort of it, really. So, okay, this is the last one. Let me explain this one. So this was kind of averaging over all the quizzes to get a feel for what is this quiz like when you're averaging all over all the students. This picture is about sort of, it's a heat map for each attempt. So kind of each data point would be an attempt. So not just a student, but each attempt that student is making. So the y-axis is their mark, and the x-axis is the number of hours they've spent with that attempt open. So I've limited the attempt to 2 hours. So the x-axis is 0 to 2 is the time limit. It's a cutoff. And you can see the vast majority of attempts are under half an hour. So it's not like they're using the time. I pitched the questions as fairly basic level questions. It should not take anywhere close to 2 hours to do. Some students they have the quiz open for that long. Not clear what they're doing for those 2 hours. But the vast majority are under an hour and even under half an hour. But otherwise, there's no relationship, right? So I said in the last slide that there was the lower the mark, the higher the effort. I mean, that's on a module level, that might be true. But when you look at individual students, this is not, there's no sort of relationship in the data. And in fact, there's a huge range of behavior. So, okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So there's some takeaways that I wanted to summarize. One is from the difficulty in student effort picture, you can see, for example, this first year module, the one in the middle, is quite easy. Attempts weren't very high. The marks were very high, so like 80s. Which is fine. I think it's sort of good to accept, yes, this is an easy quiz. In the context of the module, this is what we intend. For the module I'm leading, the last quiz was a bit hard. I think I probably will change this next year. And anyway, there's a couple of tweaks like along these lines that I will make. Bigger picture, though, I think on reflection, this delay between the attempts they're allowed, 10 minutes or 20 minutes. The two right ones here, so the second and third first year modules, they had an hour-long delay, which seems to have kind of depressed the number of attempts that students make. And I remember we had reports of students being very frustrated with this delay. The intention is that they're supposed to reflect on the feedback and look at the notes and things, but in reality, many of them they got distracted and did other things, and they didn't come back to the quiz, and then they just left it at that. So I think if we were reducing it down to something like 5 minutes, which is still enough to reflect, but then not enough to get distracted so that they can have another attempt right away. And also, I think reducing the duration to 1 hour is probably what we're going to do next year. I mean, I think if you're spending more than 1 hour, then it's probably not a good use of your time, and you should be doing more preparation work before you open the quiz in the first place. So there's sort of slight behavioral things that I just want to slightly change how students are doing things, and I'm going to change the parameters of the quiz to achieve that. And also next year, we're going to introduce a little bit more into first year. But okay, that's all I wanted to say. Hopefully that update was illuminating. I'm happy to take questions. Great. Thanks a lot. See you later.